With those logistics out of the way, I would like to introduce my guest for tonight. My guest for tonight is truly a treat. You guys may have seen Jeff on this stream before, but I just want to take an opportunity to really talk about Jeff, right? He is a man whose security expertise is only slightly overshadowed by his love for moon pies. His elite hacking skills afforded him the distinguished honor of hacking into his goldfish's account only to find out it was a catfish. I once saw...
That's not truly... That's not 100% accurate. It was not a goldfish.
It was a catfish.
No, it was actually just not a goldfish that was some other fish, beta fish. It was a beta fish.
It was a beta fish. I also saw Jeff one time social engineer his way to the bathroom. Please welcome my good friend and esteemed colleague, Jeff Coles.
Your introductions, by the way, really, really leave nothing to chance.
I told you I had a good one. See, this is what happens. So for everybody on the stream, right?
This is what happens when I don't give you what to say. Here's my bio. No, don't worry about it, Neil. You got it.
I was on vacation for a little while. Then Jeff was on vacation. We missed a couple of the eLearn Security podcast, and so this is some pent up lover aggression that
exactly.
Jeff and I got going on. As a reminder, Jeff is here in his unofficial capacity, and for better or worse, his opinions are his alone and not endorsed by his employer. Everybody, give a round of applause to Jeff.
Cheers.
All right, as always, if you're interested in being a guest on the show, please don't hesitate to reach out to us on Twitter or LinkedIn. You can use the !Twitter or !LinkedIn commands, and Nightbot will give you the links to those. I have some fantastic news for everybody who has been direly waiting to hear about this, and I know this is really gonna make a lot of you very, very happy. Twitch has approved finally our cyber insecurity emotes. Now I'm excited about our emotes because we have put a lot of time and effort into what we thought were some very appropriate emotes for both the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 subscriber levels for the emotes. We have your run-of-the-mill cybersecurity emotes for a lot of our Tier 1 subs. I'll see if we can kind of pop in. We've got cyber peppy going on here in Tier 1. We've got a little Peter Griffin going on here for a little bit of the nonsensical cybersecurity stuff we got on. So we got a lot of good Tier 1 emotes going on. Our Tier 2 subscribers get access to the absolutely coveted hooded hacker emote. So there we go with our Tier 2. So you can be everything that you've always wanted to be with the hooded hacker. And then, of course, our Tier 3 subscribers get the absolutely, utterly coveted, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to channel the hacker man himself. So, with that being said, you can always use the Hack Planet score down below to unlock a random sub for about 24 hours. Make sure you enjoy those. Speaking of the Hacked Planet score, excuse me, don't forget that you, the community, controls when we do our next giveaway through those Hacked Planet scores at the bottom of your chat screen, right? And so I think as of today, we're only about 8% towards our giveaway goal for the month. We have about 19 days left to go, and as I see that, I see Piper dropping in some Hacked Planet scores into chat right now. So we've got about 19 days left to go. There's lots of ways that you can contribute to the Hack Planet score, turning in your points to make sure that my guest or myself stay hydrated through the stream. Little hint, Jeff has wine. So every time you drop a hydrate, Jeff drinks wine. This could make for a really interesting stream if we're not careful. We can
get more interesting.
Or more interesting, yeah, depending on how we do it. You can have us take a stretch if you want. You can suggest polls that we want to run, or you can help us pick a lucky member of the community. One of the things that we want to do is try to support other streamers as well, and so you can kind of help support the where we do our next raid on which streamer we do. Obviously, subscribers get additional multipliers, and that ultimately helps us get to our goal faster. The faster we get to the goal, the more giveaways we get to do. So I see a bunch of people turning in hacked planet scores. Look at that. We went from 8% to 11% in that 15 seconds of talking about it. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Keep it up with the hacked planet score. What else we got here? That's right. We still have a ton of hacker gear to give away. I've got a couple pineapples, land turtles. We've got some training stuff. We continue to onboard sponsors. INE Training being kind of one of the latest sponsors that we've onboarded. The good thing about having a sponsor like INE Training is good opportunity to give away some training. So that's some stuff that we're going to give away. We obviously want to give away this stuff to you. If you've been a part of the stream, you've participated in this stream. For frequently. Hey, Zero Sploit says to hydrate. Jeff, you hydrate while I talk. If you participate in the stream, you see that we love to give stuff away, and so I actually want to give this stuff to you. So make sure you keep contributing those hacked planet scores so that we can keep giving stuff away. Couple community reminders. We have been invited to do the evening news on November 7th as part of the Secure West Virginia conference. You can hit the exclamation point Secure WV inside a chat to get information on Secure West Virginia. Normally wouldn't be a big deal, but obviously we are going to try to do something huge for that stream. We are in conversations with the promoter of Secure West Virginia to do something huge. We did manage to secure, and this is one of the guests that I mentioned last week when I kind of gave you the hint. If you remember on last Wednesday stream, I think it was, I gave you a hint that we were going to have a pretty substantial guest come on the show. As luck would have it, I talked to that person on Thursday. They were thoroughly excited to be on the stream, and so we've managed to secure a former Air Force operator. He is also the creator of the SANS Industrial Control Systems courses. He's also the founder and CEO of Dragos Inc., Mr. Robert Lee. He will be on our stream on November 7th. He's an amazing resource. If you've never seen or met Rob, this would be a great opportunity to come get his perspective from someone who has literally pioneered the way for industrial control system cybersecurity. Some of the most famous Fortune companies out there have used him. He's all over the place. He's consulted for Vice's Cyber War series. He's actually appeared on the show, at least once out there. He's also got numerous other accolades, and so you definitely do not want to miss a chance to hear from him and pick his brain. He will be on the stream that's going to be November 7th during our normal stream time from 7 to 9 p.m. Central. Make sure you get out there to check out Rob Lee. In addition to just everything else that Secure West Virginia has got going on, John Strand from Black Hills, he's actually going to be out there doing the keynote. He's going to be talking about cyber deception. If you've never participated in, like the Worldwide Hacking Fest that John Strand does, Secure West Virginia is going to be another opportunity. Thanks, Zero Sports, for the cheer. I appreciate that. Secure West Virginia is going to be another opportunity for you to kind of come and hear from some of the experts at Black Hills. They're going to be doing training courses from November 2 through 5th, and some of those training courses are going to include, attack emulation, modern web app pen testing, applied purple teaming, advanced network threat hunting, active defense and cyber deception, cyber deception, much like my speech, and breaching the cloud. Obviously, all these are good choices. Again, remember, hit that exclamation point, Secure WV, and you'll get a link to register for that.
By the way, thanks for having me on before and not after Rob Lee. Appreciate it.
You didn't want to follow that act, did you?
No, pretty much not.
No, I made sure there was a long distance between you and our last guest.
Excellent.
I made sure that way that the people were fresh and they kind of forgot what it was like to have a real guest on the show.
Perfect.
Okay. As a reminder, I know this is what everybody's excited for. I know I'm excited for it. I probably shouldn't be nearly as excited as I am right now, right? But this coming Friday, I had to have a conversation with somebody about what that meant, right? So this coming Friday, October 9th, at around 9:30 Central Standard Time, we will be out at the Autobahn racetrack with GuidePoint Security, Cyber Reason, whom you guys should ask Jeff tons of questions about Cyber Reason because he secretly loves Cyber Reason, as well as Big ID. Now, assuming everybody's practicing good COVID protocols, I do plan on being safe. We do plan on trying to stream as much of that event as possible. However, I need you, everybody who's out there listening right now, I need everybody part of this community. I need your support because you all are going to pick the supercar that I get to drive for that racetrack. And so, hopefully the way this works is we're going to get out there, we're going to be able to see these cars. We'll get to do some walk-arounds. Hopefully we'll be able to do some crazy stuff with these cars and whatnot. And then at some point in time, when we have to make the decision about what car we want to drive, we're going to do a poll on the stream, and I'm going to be asking for you, the community, to basically help me decide which car we should drive as part of this. And so definitely going to need everybody's support on Friday morning. Hopefully it's a good time for everybody in the U.S. as well as overseas. You'll probably see us run some tests this week, just making sure that, streaming on the cell phone and things like that are going to turn out really well. And so if you definitely catch us streaming that, kind of those test runs, make sure you hop on the stream, give us some feedback how the audio and the video sounds, and things like that, and feel free to join those test sessions and give us your feedback, because we want to make sure that Friday's event's going to be pretty awesome. Obviously, we're going to talk about cyber. Don't be afraid that we're not going to talk about cyber. We're going to talk to the guys at GuidePoint. We'll talk to Cyber Reason. We'll make sure that they know Jeff's name and that they're ready to give an interview to Jeff, if they decide that Jeff's good enough to come join the guys.
I just want to drive the Porsche.
I'm hoping.
I don't think I'd fit in the Ferrari.
You don't think you'd fit in the Ferrari?
I might not fit in the Porsche either. I might be stuck with the Mustang.
I'm secretly hoping for the Ferrari. I'm hoping the community votes the Ferrari for me. But like I said, I'm anxious to see what the community really drops in for me for that. Anyway. With all of that now out of the way, let us hop into the news. Jeff, what do you say?
You're here. Let's go.
So,
I knew you were going to go to John McAfee first.
This is literally breaking news. This literally happened not 2 hours ago, and so I couldn't not talk about it. Huge surprise from Insecure Packets out there. So for those of you who don't know who John McAfee is,
okay. Seriously, really? That's going to be your introduction to this article for those who don't know John McAfee?
But I mean, you don't really know John McAfee. I'm like, people who say, "Oh, it's McAfee, John McAfee, he owns the McAfee software and things like that," have not seen just the utter escapades. Jeff? Did you see that Gringo show that was on Netflix or Showtime or whatever?
No,
you haven't seen that. Oh my God.
I haven't. Is this my next binge?
Yeah, this is your. It's only one movie.
My next COVID. Oh, it's only one movie. Okay.
Yeah.
I need 47 episode kind of binge watching to make me happy.
You can watch this thing 47 times. No,
that's really lame binge watching, by the way.
It's right up your alley.
Perfect.
No. So the premise of this movie, right? That's on Showtime. For those who have seen it, I don't know anybody in chat who's seen it. I'll try not to ruin too much of it, but I mean, it's more of a documentary.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, we should have a big giant spoiler word on there, right? Is like it talks about John McAfee from when he gets cut out from his leadership responsibilities at McAfee, and how he goes to this compound. I think it was out in Colorado. He's out in this compound in Colorado, and then he's totally paranoid about the government and things like that. And so he literally packs up his entire net worth and everything and moves to Costa Rica and starts to get involved with all of the gangs and all the corruption and everything that is in Costa Rica, living his lavish lifestyle on the edges of Costa Rica. He then ultimately, allegedly has some altercation with his neighbor where his neighbor dies. And then he smuggles himself way back into the United States, claiming that the Costa Rica government is trying to blackmail him, or so the story goes, right? And then he's been back in the United States ever since. And ever since he's been back in the United States, this dude has tried to sell a hack-proof, crypto hard wallet. He has tried to be on the forefront of numerous crypto, initial coin offerings, ICOs. He has constantly, just tried to be as controversial as humanly possible for this guy. And lo and behold, today, as Insecure Packets says right there, huge surprise, he gets indicted for tax evasion. I think it was really only a matter of time. But before we saw this coming,
he was going to get caught for something. We just didn't know what. I mean,
it's so hard not to look at this and be like, effing duh, right? Like, of course. I think really the only thing you can really pick apart about this is this is just more evidence that the IRS is getting serious about coming after you for not claiming your cryptocurrency assets.
Well, cryptocurrency is going to be a thing that they continue to go after, and I think McAfee for sure should have known.
He should have known. I would be surprised. I mean, we say we should have known. I don't think McAfee didn't know. I thought I would venture more along the lines of he thought he was untouchable.
That's probably true.
Yeah. This guy is so far off the rails. Like, so far off the rails. It would not surprise me if he's like, oh, they'll never catch me. I mean, he did go for almost from 2014 to 2018, right here, failed to file tax returns. Like, I mean, just what did you think was going to happen when you just didn't file any tax returns?
Yeah, exactly. You make millions and millions and millions of dollars year after year after year, and then you don't file a tax return. Brilliant.
So we could beat up on John McAfee, but he is kind of the pioneer of some of the greatest antivirus software on the entire face of the planet, McAfee. And so we thought it was worthwhile cybersecurity news for everybody to get out of that one. Moving on to kind of our next topic for tonight is, and actually, probably more of a real topic than anything else, right? Is this topic of a cyberwar bloatware? Yeah, exactly. So, of interest, Jeff, I'd love to hear your take on this, because I know we've talked ad nauseum about this at dinner over wine before, but I was at ThoughtCon, I think it was 2013 or 2014 here in Chicago. And I actually heard somebody on stage have the audacity. This was 2013. Literally, I just come out of the Air Force, literally just separated from the Air Force, and I actually had the audacity to have somebody come up on stage and say that we were not engaged in cyber war. And that was 2013, and I was appalled by it. And so like
I could understand in 2013. I don't think critical mass had quite hit the world yet on truly cyber warfare, like the common everyday person being involved in cyber warfare. Now, I definitely think that literally everyone is. They just don't know it.
I mean, but as you can see right there, like Stuxnet happened in 2010, right? I mean, like everybody was talking about Stuxnet in 2010. How could and even before then, you had Estonia, I think was in 2008 when allegedly the Russians had knocked out the power of Estonia, during one of the critical election points to try to sway the election. I think it was mid 2000s that was.
Wait, so Russians deal with elections? they kind of mess with elections? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, God, who'd have thought it? I mean, they must have started to do that here recently.
It's brand new news.
Brand new news. No, but I mean, I guess I don't know. Like, I don't see how you could get away with saying that cyber war didn't exist even back then. I think if you were to say mid 2000s, you could probably get away with that argument. But I guess even in 2013 and even now, I still find it interesting that people don't really truly understand what the definition of cyber war is.
Okay, so here's the devil's advocate in me, right? You've been in enterprise cybersecurity for years. So you're saying 5, 6, 7 years ago, you were already starting to see much higher, almost unlimited budgets for you to go solve cyber warfare as it hits the enterprise.
No, and here's
that's my point. I mean, I don't think it's been common knowledge for the board now. Absolutely. Now the boards are like, okay, what's our cyber strategy? How are we protecting? But back then, I don't think anyone at the board level was really all that crazy.
I don't think anybody on the board level's thinking about cyber war anyway. I mean, we've talked a little bit about some of the minor things that are going on, but I don't think anybody at the board's like thinking about cyber war as a concept.
Well, they should.
What exactly? What if you were sitting in front of a board today, I'm the chairman of the board of Neil's awesome company. Like, what would you tell me about cyber war?
That we're all being attacked in some way, shape, or form. All of us are being attacked, and it's not necessarily all just business kind of attacking. It's bigger than just business. I mean, you and I've talked about China and what they've been doing for years and years, which is intellectual property stealing.
Mm-hmm.
That affects every single business, and it is cyber warfare, but it's cyber warfare at a grand scale that targets individuals or individual companies. And so it's all these silos of responsibility with these individual companies that collectively equal cyber warfare.
I guess
you don't think so?
Well, but here's the challenge. Like, okay, so I'm going to put my devil's advocate hat on, right? And so I'm sitting on the board. I'm like, if it's a war, if it's cyber war, that's the government's problem. It's not. I'm making chocolate. That's not my problem.
I'm making chocolate. Well, to that point, they're probably not attacking you. If you're truly making chocolate, they might not be attacking you. But you and I get into this discussion all the time about whose responsibility is it, and I think it's everyone's responsibility to solve. Is it the government's responsibility to stop it? Good luck. At that point, it's been my contention for a while that it's the government's responsibility to maybe provide best practices, provide a framework, help companies by giving them best practices and guidance, but it's really up to the companies to do the heavy lifting.
I don't think. I think the board struggles
at least defensively.
Well, but here's where I disagree with you. Right? Is I think the board struggles enough understanding the value of ransomware, right? Or understands the value of how do they spend the money in their enterprise on the technology that really matters, or on the process, or even on the people that really matters, let alone what's happening now with COVID and the
well, it's a different ROI model. They've never had to do ROI model for it might happen, it might not happen, but if it happens, it's really, really, really bad. How do you do an ROI model about that?
But again, I think what you're really talking about is you're talking about a threat model with ROI components in it, right? Is where does cyber war with China even fall on your threat model, right? I think when you look at the 75% of the verticals that are out there, cyber war is not on your bingo map.
True, but how do you solve it as a government? You're not going to put cyber agents on site for all these companies.
No.
Right? You're not going to put endpoint agents on the endpoint. So you've got to handle this from a network perspective. Good luck.
Yeah, I was going to say good luck with that.
So, I mean, I don't see how it could possibly be the government's responsibility to stop it defensively. It has to fall on the enterprises for defensive purposes. And then offensive purposes, the offensive side of the warfare, absolutely falls on government.
So you mentioned frameworks and the government putting a framework in place. Security guru guy in chat says, "Isn't that what NIST is?"
Yeah.
What's wrong with NIST? Why shouldn't every company in the U.S. adopt NIST?
Oh, I think they should.
Then why don't they?
Good question. Because board members don't see the fact that it is cyber warfare right now.
You think NIST and cyber warfare are a synonymous conversation with each other?
I think it's a really, really easy stepping stone conversation.
Do these NIST things, and you will be somewhat protected if cyber warfare is in your threat model bingo.
No, I think it's more along the lines of, hey, the government's given this kind of framework built out as a starting point. I don't think NIST goes far enough personally, but I think it gets you a good starting point. And if you can build it out to that, cool. I might not be the most secure, but I'm more secure than, say, a third or a half of the rest of the organization or the rest of the country. So they're going to be more at risk, and it's going to be harder to attack me.
I think my problem with NIST, and I use the word problem loosely, right, is I just I think you said it right. It doesn't go far enough, number one. Number two, we've got organizations, in the consulting space that have tried to create, these very, very subjective NIST scoring
Hmm.
systems. And
It's individualized,
it's
which is part of the problem, right? So that part of the area where I think it doesn't go far enough is it doesn't provide a common grading system. It doesn't provide a common set of do this at the very least, next do this, next do this, next do this. Um, you know, there's a lot of things. And even with that, it's going to be really hard for collectively individual companies to be brought together for a national grading system of how well we're adhering to NIST. Like, how do you do that? How do you report on that?
Well, I think we've got a comment in chat, right? Hard to get an old school business guy to get behind MFA versus a fancy new business related tool. I think if you were to take that one step further, I think the reason that scores like NIST exist and CMMI or CMMC, depending on where you're at, right, is because, with all due respect to the board members who may or may not be listening to this stream tonight, that's all they can really understand is a 3.5 or a 3.7 or a 4.0.
Well, and beyond that, every other piece of their decision making, it's either how will this make my company more money, and that's an easy ROI description, right? You say, okay, there's my cost, here's my return, here's the time frame involved. Cool, I make money in 17 months, right? Security's always been a cost center. Like, how are you turning a profit with installing more security? All you're doing is reducing, not even taking it to zero, but you're reducing the amount of risk your company's going to be exposed to. So the ROI on that is, I'm a little short on making my bonus this year, so we're not going to spend money on cybersecurity so I can make my bonus. And then I know it sounds like I'm really, really picking on board members. I'm not trying to. I'm saying the problem with security is that it's inherently flawed because there's no way to fund it correctly to start with. And second of all, it's being looked at as part of a business as only being a cost center and the problem child of how to actually pay for it as an organization.
So, good question in chat, right, from Edward Malice says, what percentage of a good cybersecurity strategy would be the same at company X versus company Y? By which I mean, how much of your protections would be specific to your company or your industry as opposed to just generically good practice?
Well, I mean, so Neil, talk about your reference architecture. I mean, we've had this conversation. No, I'm serious. I mean, we've had this conversation for years, and it's like you go to a new place and you talk about it as a consultant, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's brilliant."
Well, so for what Jeff's referring to is a couple years ago. God, it's probably been 5 years now or something like that when we first started talking about reference architecture model. Jeff and I were enjoying some good wine over some Brazilian steakhouse, and I got really frustrated at some conversation.
I only drink wine. That isn't true.
Well,
I drink beer too.
I did get you to drink old fashions one time at that one event that we went to.
See, I don't do it anymore.
That was the last time you drank old fashions.
Right. I went back to wine.
Anyway, we got some hydrates. Take a sip of your wine. Speaking of which,
here.
So a couple 5 years ago, Jeff and I were chilling out, and I said, well, the problem is that we don't have this idea of a reference architecture model that we can universally apply to organizations. That at least gets, from a security operational control perspective, a minimum level of acceptable cybersecurity controls in place. And so I drew, we call it reference architecture model. I jokingly talk about it being my flux capacitor because it looks like I fell off the toilet and hit my head on the toilet, and drew a giant triangle, for my reference architecture model that consists of, having some form of centralized logging, having some form of endpoint protection, and having some form of email protection. And with those three things right there, you should gain the visibility and be able to protect from your two largest threat vectors pre-COVID. Obviously, we could adjust the flux capacitor for a post-COVID world.
1.21 gigawatts.
Right. But I think to answer your question, Edward, I think, does the same strategy apply versus having good, general practices? I think I think a baseline strategy, a reference architecture model could be applied to the industry as a whole that says at a minimum organizations should have this. I think what everybody's afraid of doing in a scenario like this, and Jeff, keep me honest if you agree or disagree on this, is I think folks are afraid to say, yes, that's a good minimum model, because then the leadership will turn around and say, cool, I'm done. I don't have to invest anything else because the industry has said this is the minimum I have to have. And we see that with PCI, we see it with HIPAA. I think we even see it with NIST. And I don't know, Jeff, if you want to weigh in on that
No,
as well.
well, you went further. I think you had too many wines by this point, so you didn't remember as much of the conversation as I did. But you were talking about a bullseye, right? And you had concentric circles of the bullseye, and you're like, okay, so my key part of the reference architecture, right at the core of the philosophy, is an endpoint security solution, email security solution, and a SIM to aggregate that as well as network telemetry and bring it all together, right? That's the center, but you have to have many, many more rings around that of lesser and lesser priority. But as a starting point, pick your three things, stick to it, and then build out the rest of your model in a prioritized concentric circle. Maybe first year you do, the inner circle. Second year you do the next one, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of what you were talking about.
That is kind of what I'm talking about. Now that you're talking about that, though, I think the conversation, especially in a post-COVID world, may actually change. And if I were to redo that model, I actually think the conversation has now shifted to the attack surface. I think cybersecurity in a COVID world might be less about some of those technologies that exist on, endpoints. Not that I don't devalue endpoint protection. I'm a huge fan of EDR, and I've been a huge fan of the visibility that brings security operations centers for a really long time. But we used to, and we've said this on the stream, we've said this in chats and things like this a number of times, is that, we used to always joke that said that, the boundary of the network is expanding with BYOD and your devices and things like that. But I think it's really expanded with COVID. And I think the more that we see that bounds expanding, and the more we see cloud becoming, a huge centerpiece of that expansion, I think the attack surface is now really starting to kind of almost take the center stage in terms of what's important to us from an enterprise perspective, and gaining the visibility on that attack surface with where our enterprise really is on a global scale. I might actually start to rethink what the reference architecture model might look like in a post-COVID world.
Interesting. So how do you think that this relates back to the initial question, which is cyber warfare? Are we in it?
Well, so let's take the attacks. Let's assume that we're going to go down the route of attack surface, right? I think if in cyber warfare, an organization is a target, right? And so in kinetic warfare, right, a communications building or a communications tower or fuel depot or an airstrip, right? Those are static kinetic targets, right? If in a pre-COVID world, the defense contracting company or Lockheed Martin or Google or Facebook or somebody like that was a target company, I think in a post-COVID world, in the cyber warfare age right now, with the attack surface expanding the way that it is, I think the probability that we'll see cyber warfare attack a wider scope of cyber targets, I think that's the relevance that we see in a post-COVID world as we see the attack surface expand.
So do you think that as part of cyber warfare, they're just trolling right now to gather whatever pawns they can have in their end game?
What do you mean? Because I could interpret that a couple different ways. Like I think in cyber warfare, our cyber adversaries, and make no mistake about it, you heard this when General Williams was on the stream, whenever he was on the stream a few months ago, right? We're doing the exact same thing. So, we say our cyber adversaries, but it's also us. I think they are doing what's referred to as OPE, or operational preparation of the environment, where they are conducting offensive operations on on respective nations, so that they have a strategic advantage when the time comes for a more aggressive cyber warfare task. And I think
I love, by the way, that you asked me, what do I mean? And then you started to talk. I love that. But that's exactly what I was referring to. I mean, you take a look at it from a conventional perspective, right? Before you go to war, you're going to set up your spy network and you're going to get things set in place. And I kind of feel like we're in that mode right now where they're trolling around. They're finding out what assets they can own. And, once all of their pieces are in place, they're going to say, okay, execute plan, 1.21 gigawatts, right?
we're adding that to the Hacked Planet score. Plan 1.21 gigawatts. We will find something awesome to do with that, but we are adding that to the Hacked Planet score.
As taking physics in college, I've kind of ruined my gigawatt, ability. I can't talk gigawatts. I have to say gigawatts. Sorry. It's hard for me.
I'm just waiting for you to get all the frizzy hair. Oh, that's right.
17 of them right here. If I could grow them out long enough.
Yeah.
You're one to talk.
I know, right? So bottom line, right? So I'll ask you this question. I know your answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is the United States of America ready for cyber war?
No.
What is the biggest cyber warfare threat to enterprises? If you were sitting in front of a board member right now and they were to ask you that question, what is the biggest cyber warfare threat to enterprises today? What would you say?
Ambivalence. Absolute ambivalence. They don't think they need to care.
They don't think they need to care. They don't care. I think they just generally don't care.
I think they would care if they thought they needed to. They don't see the reason or the value of caring at this point.
So Ty Kabambo.
Execute Order 60. Execute Order 66.
I was hoping you didn't see that. So
come on, that was a decent Palpatine, right?
That was a decent Palpatine. Don't make us do a poll if that was a decent Palpatine.
No, please don't.
Well, if it's all about money, why not give companies a tax deduction or something for implementing NIST standards? Ooh, Jeff, you're a former finance dude. Why don't we give companies a tax deduction for implementing NIST standards?
We should.
You think so?
Why
Come
not?
on.
Okay, no. So here's the deal. No, okay, seriously, you're going to give me grief about this?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Oh man. Okay, let's devil's advocate.
Okay.
I am the CFO of the United States of America. Come on,
you're Steve Mnuchin.
Yeah, Trump could do that. He could just add that. Like, I'm announcing CFO of the United States of America. It's gonna be awesome. It's fabulous. Never been done before.
Non-political Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. But no, so I'm sitting here saying, okay, if I have a multitude of companies that literally will be owned and could be forced to go bankrupt if they had their intellectual property stolen, is it in my best interest as a country to ensure that they protect the assets that make this country more money? Absolutely. So I'm going to give tax credits to people who invest in cybersecurity to protect the crown jewels of the country that pays my taxes.
But do you really think tax credits are the right answer to that?
It's better than nothing. Like what's going on right now?
I guess I just have a maybe it's more personal to me than anything else. But maybe I just have a fundamental problem with the idea of giving. I mean, we give so many tax credits to corporations as it is right now. I mean, and I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm not an so I
we're about to give free college away. I mean, come on.
I think the broader answer to the question.
You think free college is a dumber idea than tax credits for securing the assets of our country?
No, if I had to pick one or the other, I would say the tax credits. But I guess I think there does need to be incentive. But here's the problem that I have with incentive, and we saw this in the energy sector, mid 2000s, 2010, around in there, especially when the industrial control system stuff was really starting to become a really big deal. We had that power outage in the Northeast power grid that one time. I think Australia had an industrial control system hack.
And we all got in-home generators.
Well, there was that, right? But the energy, the government comes down and says your critical infrastructure, you have to protect your critical infrastructure, and the energy companies say, "Cool, where's my money to do it?" And I think that's the circle that we run into whenever you mandate that you have to be cybersecurity, conscious, and then they say, "Cool, where's my money to do it?" And I guess if we have to use tax credits to make it happen, then so be it. But I definitely think there has to be some incentive to be more cybersecurity.
Okay, how about a tax if you are not secure?
What about we actually enforce the
Go the other way.
What about it? We actually enforce the GDPR rules, or we actually put some teeth behind CCPA and not let companies get away with it. Like that's the whole purpose behind those.
Well, yeah. Well, that's an entirely different conversation. Like the ambiguity of who gets the actual bill from GDPR versus who doesn't. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, we're going to bill you and we're going to let them go. Oh, it's exactly the same problem. We would have exactly the same issue here unless we defined what the scope is and how and when people get fined. How about we start with NIST and say, if you're not at a certain level, they did this for emissions, for crying out loud. Every single manufacturer of engines had to be at a certain level, and if they weren't, they had to pay a tax on every single engine that they sold. So if we do that for emissions, why not do it for security? You have to be at level 1 by this year, level 3 by next year, or whatever. And if you're not, here's a tax bill.
That's actually not a terrible.
And by the way, if you do it 2 years ahead of time, here's a tax credit. If you escalate how quickly you get up to the proper government ordained framework. Listen, I'm not a huge advocate for more government, but I think there's got to be some kind of minimum standard that companies have to adhere to, and either a penalty or a benefit for adhering to that. Like that's going to have to be how this thing gets solved, because I don't think people care enough about cyber warfare to do anything about it.
I think on that note, that's probably a pretty good opportunity for us to kind of move to our next topic. For tonight, Jeff.
In other words, shut up, Jeff.
No. I don't. I think there's a lot of dead horse to beat here. But I think the bottom line is you're right. We've got to give companies more reason to want to do cybersecurity. And whether it's more teeth on, the penalty side, or whether it's more incentives on the tax side, I think that's the problem that we've got to try to solve. And so I agree with you.
Whoa! I'm sorry. Can I hear that again?
Shit. Swear jar. That's twice.
Anna Marie's going to have a nice dinner tonight.
Oh, boy. Ant-Man says that they agree with you 100%. So that's two people tonight that agrees with you. Let's not agree with Jeff, okay? His head's going to get way too big for this conversation as it is. All right, moving on.
With your intro, I needed some help.
Oh, God. Here's another one. So you guys remember, we talked about Garmin, what was it, a month ago when the Garmin thing happened. I think Jeff and you and I talked about this on the ELS podcast when we were chatting about it, right? And I think my biggest, I think I had two big takeaways when it came to the Garmin thing, right? Which was one, whether they needed to report it to the shareholders. And then number two, how did they get away with paying the ransom to an organization that was blatantly on, the OFAC list? And lo and behold,
paying no attention to the man behind the curtain.
All of a sudden, it's almost as if the Department of Treasury was listening to us.
Oops.
You mean we're not paying attention to companies that are on the OFAC list? So yes, 4 days ago, the Department of Treasury released this.
All I have to say is I hope the Treasury is not going to like institute a swear jar tax or something.
Do I have to report? Do I have to report those earnings?
Exactly.
Oh God! You know what? So the swear jar thing for everybody on the stream, the swear jar thing was because I made a promise that I wouldn't swear like a sailor on the stream because I have a really bad tendency of swearing like a sailor.
Once or twice
every 30 seconds.
You almost did it again.
and so I've been seriously reprimanded by my chain of command about my swearing. So that's the swear jar joke. Now you're all read into the swear jar joke. Back to the news for tonight. Biggest headline for tonight. I think it's the biggest headline for tonight because, like I said, we railed on Garmin pretty hard for this. Treasury sent out an advisory on potential sanctions risk for facilitating ransomware payments, and the way they worded this, Jeff, this actually spreads just a little bit further than just like risk for paying the ransomware. It's talking about facilitating the ransomware payments. And so when we think about things like third-party brokers that try to broker insurance payments for companies, insurance companies themselves, incident response companies, all of these companies are really ultimately affected by this. It's not just like the Garmins of the world. It's anybody who kind of stands in that realm. And so I think there's a lot of Treasury mumbo jumbo because, they have to explain what ransomware is because, somebody who reads this may not know what ransomware is. They talk about, OFAC designations for malicious cyber actors, and they go through, a couple of examples, ransomware in 2013, 2015, 2017. You see where they talk about Evil Corp, which was, what was believed to be responsible for the Garmin hack. And it blatantly comes out and says that they have imposed and will continue to impose sanctions on these actors, to reduce their financial support. But one of the things that I thought was super interesting about this, they talk about, a lot of this stuff in here. So facilitating ransom payments made on behalf of the victim. Lots of legalese, mumbo jumbo. Happy to put this in chat. It's pretty easy to find out there. It's on the Treasury Department's website. But it specifically talks about where is it at? Where did I see it earlier? My gosh, where is it? I lost it. But either way, I'll find it here in a second. They talk about continuing to impose civil penalties for companies that are even held civilly liable if they did not know or have reason to know that it was engaging in the transaction with a person that is prohibited under sanctions and laws. And then it goes on to talk about encouraging financial institutions and other companies to implement a risk-based compliance program to mitigate exposures to sanction-related violations. So basically, they're like, we're going to fine you for paying a ransomware. So our solution to this, speaking of government involvement, is to implement a risk-based compliance program to mitigate the risk.
Sounds like kind of an interesting, good idea.
Don't pay that ransom. Instead, go put in a program to make sure you mitigate the risk.
It's like almost like a double ransom.
It is almost
one
like
is illegally paid and one is legally required.
Exactly. And I also thought the other interesting part about this, where was it at? Was it down here in this one? Oh yeah, here it is. So it talks about, this paragraph right here, right, long and the short of it, right, says that they'll consider a company's self-initiated, timely, and complete report of a ransomware attack to law enforcement to be a mitigating factor.
Fail.
I didn't even get halfway through the sentence, and he's like, fail.
Well, I mean, it's almost like this paragraph was written in response to Garmin.
It is, right? I mean, that is exactly right. Thank you, Jeff.
They didn't do this. Oh, let's write that. They didn't do this. Oh, I love that idea. That's great. Let's write that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's almost as if they looked at the Garmin hack and was like, what is everything Garmin didn't do? And let's make sure that we put it in there.
How to get in trouble with the Treasury 101. Oh, yeah, I took that class. I aced it.
Yep. I guess what really, how has this not been, I mean,
how has this not gotten more news, actually? Because, unless you and I were talking about it and I was going in and doing a little bit of research, this wasn't really hitting many people's radar screen, I don't think. I'd be interested to see how many people on the chat was aware of this or like went deep dive into it. Is it hitting their newsfeed?
That's a really good question, chat. Please let us know if you heard about this or if you knew about this, kind of prior to tonight's newscast.
Yeah. By the way, the jar has been emptied twice by his wife. Not really, like literally really nice vacations.
Jeff, can we focus on OFAC?
No, I wanted to talk about the swear jar a little bit more because I think that may have been my idea.
OFAC, sanctions, Garmin.
Whatever.
Screw the news. Who cares about the news? F it.
Nice.
God.
I'm giving you an honorary swear jar donation on that one.
I wonder if I could find a little emote or emoji or something like that like we could start putting swear jar stuff into on stream or something.
I love that. Every time you say OVAC, it's like another entry to the swear jar.
Oh, is that what we're doing? Is that every time? I give up tonight.
That's awesome.
Why do I let you on this show?
I would have been nicer had you given me a legitimate introduction.
I did give you you social engineered your way to the bathroom. How much more legitimate do you get?
I did it twice.
In your entire life?
Yeah, exactly.
The best guest ever. Wow, who did you bribe to who are you?
Excellent.
What the what? Muncher says Ohio gives affirmative defense for companies against civil lawsuits in case of breach, as long as they have a cybersecurity program in place that attempts to meet or exceed a recognized framework.
It's a start.
You think it's a start?
Absolutely. Why is it just Ohio?
Oh, okay. Please do indulge us. Why is that a start?
Well, it should be the federal government that does it, not the state governments.
Affirmative defense against civil lawsuits in case of a breach just because they had an attempt at a framework. That's almost immunity against any civil penalties.
Start. I said a start. How about we just like what I was talking about before, you have to start somewhere and at least get people to move forward with something.
Edward says it best. I completely agree with Edward on this one. The you tried law. Like seriously, no. Well, we can't give. Look, this is.
I didn't say that this is where you end up. It's where you start.
It's
step number one.
If you start,
do something.
If you start with the leaniest thing possible, you'll never get more strict.
That's fair.
If you start with the you tried law,
the you tried law that is now going to be titled for now on for any comment we ever have. Well, you tried law.
We need Roy back on the stream. We're going to get Roy to comment on the you tried law.
So what did Roy say about all of this? Garmin?
Dude, I hate that you were on vacation for Roy. I would have loved to have done a roundtable. We'll have to get Roy back on here to do another roundtable with him.
With COVID, I can't even use. I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Why not?
Well, because I didn't, and everyone knows I didn't because it's COVID.
Where did you stay then?
I stayed at my flipping house, just like every other night.
Anyway, Roy, I think Roy tried to be a little on the side. He tried to be moderate where possible, but he very much was on the side of, he thinks things like GDPR are good, things like CCPA are good. They're steps in the right direction, and that people trying to kind of wiggle away at some of the legal fortitude of some of those laws. That's just the natural, institution of having those programs in place. Personally, I think he agrees with the rest of us, which is we'd love to see those laws stricter. But I think he's okay with considering GDPR and CCPA a well you tried law. I think what he advocated for, which I thought was a really good point on the stream, was why are we letting states do 50 different versions of CCPA/GDPR? Why are we not, as a federal government level, having a
Absolutely
holistic, CCPA/GDPR?
Well, that's where I was going. It should be the federal government that does this, and it should be an overarching one. And like the whole idea of you got to start somewhere, have 10 different stages, one per year. Stage one is adopt a framework or adopt whatever the government says that they have to adopt, right? You start with one that they can do without going bankrupt. Year one, year two. No, I'm serious. I mean, the bottom line, a lot of these companies, some of the companies that we talk to, Neil, totally get. They're already at step 9. They're pretty good, right? Some companies are like, yeah, I've got my 1990s subscription to John McAfee software, and I'm good to go. Yeah, John was a good guy. I bought everything he had to offer back in 1993, and I have not touched it since.
And because it's a resource hog, I haven't even done the virus updates.
Exactly. We're not going to get started on this conversation, are we? But no, if you don't have those steps in place, maybe then you're subject to penalties or some form of fine or whatever. But I think you have to have some defined steps. I'm curious if he would have said that Garmin could be tried for treason for supporting a terrorist organization or whatever. Right?
I was gonna say, I think they would have used what's the one that they use whenever you material support to a terrorist organization or whatever it is. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, not the treason one, the material support one.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if he thinks that Garmin is susceptible to that based on paying the fine.
But it can't be applied after the fact.
Why not?
What? So the Treasury releases the OFAC sanction regulations today, and then comes back and says,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily. They still, donated and supported financially an organization that's been on the watch list.
I guess
I'm just curious if he would have thought that they could be tried for that.
We can shoot him a message.
I want to ask him that.
We'll see if we can ask him that. I guess I still look at this and I'm like, why is this coming out now? Why when we've known that Evil Corp was on the OFAC list? We said that. You and I said it on the ELS stream. Yep. We said it on this stream. When we had the guest on for the stream that we had here, we knew that they were on the OFAC list. Why is this being released now, and why are we allowing, again, back to what I asked before, like why are we allowing Garmin to pay something that's on the OFAC list unless it was being, I hate to be the conspiracy theorist of the group, but unless it was being federally sanctioned by the government.
Yeah, can't be proved where the money went. I like that comment. That's true. But I think if the government tried hard enough, they could track some of that down.
Yeah.
If they wanted to, right? And that's kind of where my question's leading. Like, how much would they want to go after Garmin for doing that?
I don't think that they provide too much technology to the government. I don't think that they will. It's really just me being a conspiracy theorist. I should probably stop that.
You need a conspiracy jar?
No, I don't need a conspiracy jar. We have enough jars that we're worried about right now. Edward says, if you don't have a sort of a tier list of what you need to have based on company income, then you're going to kill people with the cost of compliance, though.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you have to have a tiered approach, a stepping stone approach where, okay, this year you got to do XYZ. And, you know, unfortunately, Neil, I'm going to end up agreeing with you on some of this. Of security companies are, money hungry to some extent and have lost some of the way of just looking out for the secure best interest of companies.
Oh, is this my too much money in cyber comment that I keep making?
Yeah, that's comment. It was way more than a comment.
it was a soapbox I was standing on
for like months. It was an entire conversation that was rehashed.
I asked Roger Hale from Big ID. I asked him that question because he does a lot of work with venture capitalist companies, and he's obviously a very, very experienced CISO, and so he was on the show maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that, 3 weeks ago, and so I asked him that, and he said something that might have me change the message on my soapbox. He says he doesn't think there's too much money in cyber. He thinks tech companies are irresponsible with how they spend it.
Okay. Interesting. I'd have a conversation about that.
Yeah. What would be your point?
I have to think about it a little bit, but part of the problem is, we talk about how solutions get built out, and it's a little bit backwards because like you and I've had this conversation where I said, "Hey, Neil, would you mind talking to some of our product managers and give them your 2 cents on what you would prioritize as a cyber operator?" Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't think that kind of conversation happens enough. I think people are like, "Hey, this would be really cool. We should build this." Oh yeah. Oh, if we do that, then we can do this. And people lost sight of the fact that, okay, if this is not going to solve a problem for a customer, they're really not going to buy it. So why are we building it?
I think
I would agree with.
I think the point he was trying to make is we've pre-COVID, right? We've been in an environment where come on, I might be selling out some people on the stream. We're about to lose some support here with this one, but we'll sell some people out, right? Pre-COVID, it was not uncommon for me to be out to dinner 4 out of 5 nights a week. Right, or at golfing, right, with some vendor, or getting wined and dined at some vendor, going to RSA. When to RSA this year, I don't think I made it back to my hotel room before midnight, any night during RSA, just because we were getting wined and dined by people, and I think that's where the sentiment is coming from is, there's. The vendors are choosing the wrong places to spend the money to have that conversation. It's the Microsoft conversation just with a startup who's got, $10 million of VC money. I'm just going to run in there and try to wine and dine my way into the CISO's good graces so they buy my software.
Dude, don't blow the gig.
Everybody listening right now is like, I want that job. How do I get that job?
You go into sales and you just do it from this side.
But I think that's the sentiment is and I don't
know. I don't disagree with that to some extent. The problem is that, okay, what's the next alternative?
What is the next alternative?
People just go to a website and they make a determination on if a product is going to fit your organization. I mean, how many of our conversations have tied to, okay, how does your use case differ from what we thought we would solve? So now I've got to go back and see if we can build something that addresses that specific need. A lot. What?
Appropriate Muncher reflects on that as well and says, let's talk about how managers use Gartner, but that score is based on how much the company spends on advertising.
Yeah, let's not talk about Gartner.
Well, but it's true. I mean, you and I had this conversation.
I know,
like 3 or 4 years ago when I sat at that Microsoft EBC, executive business something. I forgot what it's called. and they were like, oh, look, here's a Gartner chart showing Microsoft in the upper right hand quadrant, and knowing full well that they were doing nothing for EDR, but they had so much market share that they were just simply applying that market share to their Gartner score, and that was what was putting them in the upper right hand quadrant. Yeah, I mean, but that's an example of spending that money. Like, people
Yeah.
would rather spend that money on Gartner or Forrester.
Executive Business Conference, by the way.
Thank you. I couldn't. Maybe. Man, I don't know. I don't know.
It's okay. I'm here for you.
I know. I appreciate you. So I think kind of bringing this all back around, though. I think it's that forces us to not have. I think, and Muncher was going on. He had some good points in chat where he was talking about attribution, like, getting to a CIS benchmark isn't that hard. For smaller companies, or you'll see providers like you do for the PCI space. I would argue that I think getting to any benchmark is hard for any company. I would disagree that I don't think it's easy for smaller companies. I think it's probably
it's not hard for small companies that have the people and resources who know how to get them there, but it's deer in headlights for a lot of companies. They're like, hey, get to this score, and they're like, how do I do that?
I don't think small companies prioritize it. I think that's the problem that I have is it's easy for us.
Well, and they don't have the wherewithal or the people to get them there. They have to go outside consulting. There's no way for them to do it internally unless they have some rock star who happens to work for them, who just loves working for them and just happens to know all that stuff. Other than that, they have to go outside.
So we talk about small companies, right? And just to throw some stats out there, right? Because I love this stat, right? Small to medium businesses are 67% more likely to suffer a breach or a hack than a Fortune 100 company. Like, that's a proven statistic that's out there. Hackers know that they can get away with hacking small to medium businesses. When I was working for a financial firm, years and years ago, we had built a threat model that had said that, even though we were a Fortune 100, financial organization, we had a lot of very, very small banks and subsidiaries that worked for us and things like that. You could hack an entity, a mom and a pop or a bank or something like that, and steal $9,000 from, all of those organizations, from 100 organizations, from 1,000 organizations, and make a crap ton of money, and nobody would ever come after you. I think those organizations, they hear cyber, but I don't think that I agree with you in the sense that they don't have a smart person that they can turn to and say, hey, should I care about this cyber thing? But at the same time, they don't turn around to, the industry as a whole and say, hey, I'm concerned about cyber. Where do I start?
Yeah. Some of that is, hey, I'm going to put our company name out there. Where do I start? They have nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Who wants to do that?
Yeah, who wants to say, and then they come back and they say, oh, you mean cybersecurity costs money? And it gets right back to what you said at the beginning of the stream, which is cybersecurity ends up just being a cost center.
Yeah.
And a cost center for a small company, for a small to medium business, I don't think they can afford to have another cost center. And that's why I think that, it's actually harder for small companies to implement any form of cybersecurity control because they can't afford yet another cost center.
True.
Security Guru guy says we are SOC and ISO certified and it's not easy. Yeah. I think getting certified in anything, SOC, ISO.
Certified, that's an entirely different level here. We're talking just about having a cyber program.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. I mean, if you're going to go to the next level of certification, which, by the way, I think it would be required by my stupid idea to have government be in charge of setting a 10-step process of getting cyber cleared.
That you have to have a certified, you have to be certified in a program.
Well, I don't know how you wouldn't have to be certified. Like, if the government did that and gave fines or tax credits for not achieving versus achieving, you would have to have some certification program. So that's the next business to start, Neil. Exactly. That's the next business to start, Neil, is cyber certification.
Cyber certification. how is that? I mean, what would you do with that? You would create a cyber standard and say, if you want to get certified in it, you have to get our certification for it.
Yeah,
How's
I
that
think we
any
should
different
come
than
up with a
ISO or
framework,
20?
Neil, and patent it.
You have to patent it. One of the big drivers for that is the part of security that does the most is the part that everyone hates, IAM. Yeah, I think when you talk IAM though, like I think two-factor auth, like everybody just hates like doing any of the two-factor auth stuff. Maybe we could just have a NIST-like cert for small to medium businesses. I think yeah, I mean I think that's fair, Muncher. I think what I think that's what Jeff is talking about, right? Is somewhere you've got to have somebody who's savvy enough to turn around and say, here's a business that I'm going to create the small to medium business cybersecurity cert, but I still think somebody has to get paid in that equation, and I think you still have to find the value add of justifying the addition of the cybersecurity cost center. I hate to be that cynical about it, but I mean I don't know. You've got I'll use my sister as an example, right? She runs a vet office, and I love my sister to death. If she's watching, I don't know if she is or not. Or my mom actually watches the stream and loves it as well. And I think my sister does very well for herself, but it's just not a concern for her, when it comes to where she wants to put her money when she runs her vet clinic, and I just think that gets back to, there's not an appetite for small to medium businesses to have that additional cost center.
At least doesn't have to deal with patient records for animals.
I guess I get, but so when we talk about the SMB stuff, right? I guess I get back to, at the heart of it, you make money, which a cyber criminal is innately interested in your money. And so you do have something to protect because you have money that you need to protect. And so, like, whether you have EMR or not, you may not be subjected to HIPAA or anything like that,
But it is 100%. How easy is it for them to monetize the assets that you have?
Absolutely. 100%.
So it's not just that you make money, it's how they can monetize your assets.
Mm-hmm. I worry that a lot of laymen look at our industry not knowing anything of the behind the scenes and think we're overselling the threat to get more investment.
Fear mongering.
People will tell you I'm a huge, like, I will bash some people who do some fear, uncertainty, and doubt type advertising. Like, people who come to me and try to pitch me on, like, Neil, do you know how dangerous it is out there? That's not a good day for that.
Any salesperson listening to this, please send an email to Neil with that approach, because it is fun to watch.
And BCC Jeff on it so that Jeff can see.
BCC me, please.
I hate fear mongering. I think we should absolutely not be in the business of fear mongering. I think Edward gets a gold star for that one for today's chat. I think there is too much fear mongering that happens in our industry.
So what's an appropriate level of fear mongering though? Because there is an appropriate level, because there is risk, and it is bigger than what companies think that risk is.
What's an appropriate level of fear mongering? Did you really just ask that?
I did. I asked that because I do want to know.
You're taking notes on this one because
you're a selfish question. Hold on, I got to write this down.
That's right. You're gonna do this tomorrow. You're gonna call somebody up tomorrow and be like,
absolutely. Neil Bridges said I can do this amount, and your reaction is way overboard based on what he said.
I wish Frazier was on this call, because I'd be like, I could see you calling Frazier up tomorrow and being like, so Neil said this was the appropriate amount of fear mongering that we should go after.
Well, I think you kind of laid into Frazier at one point, didn't you?
I did lay into Frazier at one point. He's a good guy, but he did try some fear mongering with me, and it didn't work very well. No, look, it is a fine line to walk on how much do we articulate the risk. I feel like it's. Did you, Jeff? You're a very
Oh
athletic.
no, I want to. You are not putting this out on me.
No.
I want you to answer this question first.
I am. I'm going to answer it. I'm going to use you as my example. You being the model example of athleticism on this stream tonight. I'm sure you have been to the fair pre-COVID and done those like little climby ladders where you try to like balance yourself as you climb up and ding the bell up at the top. You've done that, right?
It's
I'm
impossible.
sure you have. And you know how it is. You're on that ladder and you're trying to navigate that and you're trying to keep your balance and everything, and just one small tip and you're flipped over and you're laying on the mat down below. I think that's the fine line that we walk when it comes to the right level of fear mongering, because I do think
so. In other words, any amount, you're basically on your butt.
I think you can tilt the scales in small increments to the left or the right, right? But I think if you're not careful, you can easily go into a fear-mongering state, and I think that's the problem. I think you should be realistic about the threat. Not and here's you. I know you'll agree with me on this one. Not every solution is perfect for every company. Not every solution is perfect for every company's problems right then. And I think people, when they get that resistance or that pushback that now's not the right time, that's when they fearmonger and fall over.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Is that an I agree with you, Neil? Like, can we get that on record that you agree with me?
Yeah, I do agree with you on that.
Yeah. I think that's the problem that we have with fear mongering is I do think we should talk about the threat. I do think we should be realistic with it. I just think that we just have to be careful about the chicken little sky is falling stuff.
Well, I think part of it is, speaking as a salesperson, it's really hard for the salesperson to be an effective fear monger anyway. It's got to be third parties and trusted sources. So I actually don't think salespeople are really ever trusted sources of fear mongering.
Well, then why do they engage in said fear mongering?
Because it's an easy way to get people to emotionally connect with the need to move quickly. And I mean, the reality is there is a need to move quickly, because I do believe that the threat is imminent. And I do believe that there are a lot of pawns that are being set in place. Is it for an end game? I don't know if I'd go there yet. That's pretty widespread conspiracy theory. But I do believe that there's a lot of monetary gain being looked at by putting several pawns in place. And do I think that they're going to all happen at once as part of a master plan? No, but I think they're going to be greedy about how they go after them and say, oh, there's an opportunity to make some cash. Let's go. But I think as long as a salesperson uses it the right way and uses legitimate statistics, it can be used, but very carefully, right? And I don't think the salesperson is ever the guy to say, boy, I sure think that this is by far the most imminent threat I've ever seen. You should act right now. I mean, unless of course it wins me the deal. But
right. I don't think I've ever been fudded that bad, but it's probably been pretty close.
No, your FUD meter is pretty sensitive.
Yeah. Hey Neil, I think you should buy this. Beep.
It's like your decibel alarm is like set to 150. Blow your eardrums.
I do. Never mind. We're not going to do that.
By the way, this conversation started with Garmin.
It did.
I'm just going to say that.
It's not uncommon we know on this stream it's not uncommon for us to get down rabbit holes.
I think we went down like the Taj Mahal of rabbit holes here.
Speaking of rabbit holes, we should go back on chat and check on chat a little bit. It reminds me of that comic.
Y2K. Yes.
I'm back. I'm further up than that. We're way behind.
My mom was driving me nuts around Y2K. What about those embedded chips? I'm like, what embedded chips? The ones on the factory floor. Don't you think that that's going to be like catastrophic?
That's about as technical as Jeff understands as Y2K. Like that's the end of his technical understanding.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. like that was where Jeff learned how to do FUD.
Y2K, isn't that a mountain?
Is that a mountain?
No, it's
Yeah.
K2.
Afras says, as a solution architect, if you don't know IAM back and forth, you just add to the chance of causing a misconfiguration breach leading to data leakage. Yeah, I agree with that. I think identity and access management. We've heard this with Roger when he was on stream, and we heard it with Bill when he was on stream.
75 different paths to data leakage. This is just one of them.
What's the most annoying one that you think that we have in this industry to data leakage?
Me?
Yeah, you. What? No, the other person that's on this stream with me tonight.
Well, you've been asking like the people that are typing more than me. Like, hey, let's go to the chat.
I'm reading their questions so that you can participate. You know how this works.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The wine is kicking in, and we haven't even had a hydrate from the chat in a while.
I'm like a glass and a half in. This is nothing. What's the most annoying one?
Yeah. I'm going to go back to the Capital One one. I think the Capital One with Open S3 buckets.
That wasn't a bad one.
When you say that, were you?
I don't know. I'm in sales. I'm never annoyed by it. This all fits to my my FUD argument, Neil.
God, see, this is why I can't ask you anything. I feel like a lot of people overlook security controls, and that's where issues happen. Yes, 100%. Ant-Man, if you want to post a link in chat, send it to one of the mods. The mod checks sandbox the link, make sure everything's no malware in there, and then they can post that link out. I like the bridge metaphor for fear. The risk
DNS, I like that one. I might have to agree with DNS on data leakage.
On data leakage? Oh, you actually do like the DNS, don't you?
I do like the DNS.
Yeah.
I used to work for a DNS company, and we did a free analysis of DNS traffic for people, and they were blown away the amount of information that we gathered about them based on their DNS traffic. They had no idea. We ended up finding one that we shared with the security director, and his face went a little ashen when we showed him the details of it, because it was a DNS storm of DNS requests coming out of the CEO's printer. So every time he went to print something, it was being posted to a Chinese domain, and we showed it to him. And it was a tech company, duh. But I know we're all shocked, but the amount of information that you could get out of a company over DNS without anyone having a clue is unbelievable.
We used to, so when we would do pen test, very similar, right? Is we had there was a PowerShell script that was out there. I have to find the name of it somewhere out there, but you could load this PowerShell script onto a system that you gained access to during a pen test, and it would simulate all the ways that you could exfil data out, right? So, and FTP 80, 443, right? And DNS was definitely one of them. And nobody would ever pick up on DNS. I think DNS is definitely that actually is a really good one.
So that one's my favorite.
Yeah, that one's now your favorite one.
Yeah.
Afras says, "Hey Jeff, this one's for you. What is a good security use case for multi-cloud compliance policy based on user-defined criteria?"
I don't know.
I wasn't sure if you were even going to attempt that one.
I'm not dumb enough to try to start explaining that one. I don't know. How's that?
Shit. That means oh damn it, fuck, God.
Yeah, just put your credit card in there, dude. Just be done.
Multi-cloud compliance policy. Here we go. I think the Capital One is a use case. I think Capital One is a perfectly good use case for that, right? I think Capital One will be our use case for any cloud compliance. With user defined controls, I think that will forever be our use case for what not to do in cloud.
Why?
They, number one, weren't doing the things that they needed to do from a cybersecurity control perspective in the first place. And then they got hit with a third-party insider threat mechanism on top of that, which showed a failure in their third-party risk management program as well.
Yeah.
S3 is complicated as hell. Agree or disagree with S3 is complicated as hell? Do you know how to spell S3?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I do think S3 is complicated. I think we struggle. I think what makes S3 complicated is the lack of consistent and uniform application of the controls after the use of S3 in the initial architecture, right? So you stand up a new app or you stand up a new function, you say that you're going to store this data, this blob, inside of an S3 bucket, and then you set it and forget it. And I think that's where people make the mistakes with S3 buckets. I think it's the lack of continuous monitoring for the controls around S3.
Well, wouldn't you say set it, forget it is the number one issue that you need to mitigate against? You can't set it and forget anything in cyber because things are always changing. Name one set it and forget it that you're good. You're good with.
That's what I'm actually trying to think of, because I mean, here's you're that's an interesting statement. Right?
You almost said you're right.
I did almost say you were right, but then I realized that I'm not, short of brain cells tonight. No, I think there are things that you don't have to pay as much attention to. But because again, you have to look at the number of cycles that a security operations center has with which to update the technology. Because again, let's think about a SOC, right? You've got incident response as a function, but then you have all of the maintenance of all of the cybersecurity tools that your CISO has gloriously blessed you with through his financial budget, right? And if you had to prioritize 3 tools, I think you could keep 3 tools up to date. But if you had to prioritize 20 tools and you had to try to keep 20 tools up to date, and you had to continue to make sure that all of them were working and operating, that's where I think you struggle. And so I think you're not wrong, but I think that it becomes vastly more complicated the more tools get added to the mix.
Well, I think you have to prioritize which tools have to have a lower set it and forget it bar.
Well, this is why I've started, and I've had this conversation with your product team, and your product team is probably one of the best to have this conversation with of all the product teams that I've talked to, right? Is that's why my reliance on APIs is so critical, right? Is because I want to be able to control all of my security tools through my automation software so that I can have a single control hub for all of my software.
Well, I was going to go there on the automation piece.
Yeah.
How much of S3 configuration can you automate? Because it's really the configuration that is the issue with them. I would agree. It's complex to get set up correctly, but if you automate it, it wouldn't necessarily be complicated to maintain. And it's really that lack of maintenance that opens up configuration holes that open the door for cyber leakage.
Yes, and this is why I think more SOCs need to move towards more automation.
Especially around configuration and control.
Absolutely, especially around configuration and control. I think if automation is typically only viewed as an IR function, right? Automating my incident response. But
it's comical. I ask companies when they say, "Hey, I got to have automation built in." I was like, "Great, define that for me."
And what do they say?
Like everything. It is across the board. Some people define it just like what you said. It's incident response, how I deal with, my SOC team found malware. How do they simplify the remediation? Well, we set up an automated workflow and it takes care of it. Um, Others define it as, no, I need manage, run, build automation within my application team and how they integrate that into a security strategy to ensure that there aren't security loopholes just with what they're building, right?
But what I think is interesting, and I'll pick your brain on this and talk. Obviously, talk to me about it where you can. Right? Is I think it's funny when people ask companies like yours, well, I want automation built in. Like, I think that shows a lack of understanding on whoever is asking that question, because I don't think it's your responsibility, given the product that your organization primarily services from like a security perspective. I don't think it's your responsibility to build in automation for most enterprises. Like, I think that's
But I
like
think it is our responsibility to ensure that the APIs facilitate automation
100%.
as much as it can. It was interesting. I was on a presentation uh, 2 weeks ago now, and it was interesting. We were talking about DNS actually, and I said, one of the interesting things that people often overlook is how much information can come out of DNS, but where automation can come into play is, gee, I get that information, and now if I can tie DNS traffic to malicious DNS traffic and then say, great, I now know the endpoint that created DNS traffic that's malicious. If I tie that to an endpoint solution, I can now know the application and the user and where else that application's running in my organization. Kill it in one step. That's automation. That's how it should play together,
Yeah.
right? And it's open APIs, it's bidirectional information as well as bidirectional instruction. I kind of look at that as API.
And,
That,
and
that to me, that to me is a benchmark for API. It's not just information sharing; it's instruction sharing.
100%, 100%. And I think if we're defining automation as facilitating it via API, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. I think I'm not paid by Carbon Black. I'm not, the stream isn't sponsored by Carbon Black by any stretch of the imagination. So I've got, I say this just because I've dealt with them for going on about 8 years now. I think that product is a staple benchmark for how an organization should be looking at, automating, or I mean, having an API, that's extensible as that API is, and it's API centric, and I think that's when I look at when I look at some of the things that we're doing in SOC innovation now across my peers and across companies that I talk to, I think that's where we're going to, especially in a COVID, type area where we have, a dispersed workforce, where we have, a highly expansive attack surface. I think if you can't look at your platform and have a completely bidirectional comprehensive API where I don't ever have to look at your interface, I think that's product failure number one right there.
So, Neil, as a security practitioner right now, how much do you think automation has increased since COVID with the change of the workforce and where they are working from, and the change in the attack surface? Like, is it double? Is it triple the need for automation in that environment?
I think
Or is it the same?
I think security teams at the operational level have realized the need for automation more. I think that they've realized that they've been behind the ball on automation. I don't think that has moved them to buy more automation, just because I think COVID has thrust other security concerns to
Fair.
kind of the forefront of the security mindset.
Yeah, Edward looks like he would agree with that as well. Not that much.
Yeah, not that much. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think we all go, holy cow, I'd really love to have more automation. But when you look at I've got to do MFA for literally.
But it's not as important as MFA, right?
Right. I've got to shut down RDP
Yeah.
everywhere. I've got to have VPN infrastructure that supports 50,000 people logging in remotely.
I need to get my IAM set up.
Yeah, I gotta get my entire identity program set up. I think when you start looking at things like that, you're going, holy cow, I really wish I had done automation.
Automation used to be on my hit list, but it's not even hitting the radar screen this week. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I do think once we get
eventually, I think it'll get there though.
Once we get some breathing room, once we get to where this is how things are going to be, absolutely. I think automation is going to take a bigger.
I think what I'm seeing in the new way of working, it's becoming more and more important.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been as high a priority because other things immediately got elevated into instant priority.
Absolutely.
This has to get taken care of tomorrow.
Absolutely. Shamu Khan wants us to stop calling him out for his MFA and his VPN and his RDP. He knows.
Sorry, man. Actually, that was more Neil than me.
It was more me. If we go back to what I kind of want to hit on a little bit, right, is more around this idea of how tools interact together, because I think you do bring up a really good point about seeing something happen over here through this type of tool, and then being able to have the tools and interoperability to make actions across.
Make better decisions faster without you having to screw around with stuff.
So I'm
swivel chair.
I've been giving a presentation to several folks outside of the stream here lately, and in one of the slides that I have, I talk about the OODA loop, and so it's probably pretty common knowledge, but just in case anybody's watching this who doesn't understand what OODA loop is, but it's OODA: observe, orient, decide, and act. And it is a military term. It was actually done by a Korean War pilot who did the first kind of talk on what the OODA loop is, but it's the ability to observe your adversary, orient yourself to your adversary, make a decision on how you're going to engage your adversary, and then act rapidly. And it's a principle that Jeff and I have talked about pretty extensively when it comes to how do you try to build your security operations center to be its most effective. And I
think we modified it as OODA because we said adapt at the end. Like, how do you adapt over time?
Right. How do you actually take what you've learned through your actions and reapply it into the entire process? But I think your interoperability conversation, I think, is key, because when we go back to talking about sales teams / companies spending money on their security on the products that they're trying to sell to CISOs and to CIOs, I think that's oftentimes a very overlooked aspect of the platforms and things like that people are building these days, is they're only focused on the integrations that are important in their space. And I'll give you an example of this is, some of the CASB solutions, right? They're only ever focused on, integrating with Microsoft, right? Because, all things, Active Directory related, pertain to Microsoft. And so whether it's Azure in the cloud or domain controllers on-prem, they're only ever focused on their integrations kind of in that point. And they may hook into a couple other, products here and there, like maybe a Zscaler or something like that. But I think there's also a gap in how security vendors are thinking about that interoperability across all things in the defensive posture when it comes to looking at them. WWJCVDD. What would Jeff call a very diseased dinosaur? I don't think
Neil.
I know. What?
Neil.
What?
No, that's what I call him.
Oh. I just rewatched Time Cop. Okay, so see, Jeff may get the Time Cop reference. I don't get the Time Cop reference on that one. But yeah, I think that's the only other thing that I would bring up is I think there's not enough focus on interoperability and technologies with what's going on out there these days. All right, so we have completely and totally derailed from news, and I'm trying.
How did we actually get to this point in the conversation?
Garmin. the GPS company led us to this conversation.
Yeah. Ba-dum-bum.
I think that that's an excellent opportunity to end the stream on a really, really terrible dad joke. Last call for questions inside of the stream while I monologue for a little bit. We did manage to get 12% raised for our giveaway for October. One capitalizes on the target, Garmin. Last call for the stream. Jeff, thank you very much from behalf of myself and all of our viewers for today for participating and allowing me to use you as a punching bag, as well as you using me for a punching bag. I appreciate it. Any last?
They're my favorite viewers, Neil.
They're your favorite viewers this time. Do you have anything that you would like to say to our viewers tonight?
No, actually, it was great questions, I will leave you with you were talking about bad dad jokes. I do have a bad joke about a dad, mine. We were talking before about multi-factor authentication. I was like, oh man, that reminds me of my dad. I was kind of explaining what I do for a living, and conversation evolves over time, and I was talking about authentication and identity and making sure that you are who you say you are. And he's like, oh, is that kind of like rectal scanning? I'm like, not quite. So it is not actually rectal. It is retinal scanning. And that's not like, it's like an HR violation waiting to happen.
Did we really just do that? Did we really just talk about rectal scanning as a form of multi-factor authentication?
HR incident meets MFA.
Oh my God, we really just did that. Multi-farter authentication. Okay, all right. Wow.
Well done.
Well, look at Chad. All right, let's go, Chad. Let's get some dad jokes going on with Chad. Come on, let's go.
I did start that, didn't I?
Full lurk mode tonight. Awesome stream. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, so for up-to-the-minute cybersecurity news, make sure you follow and subscribe to the Cyber and Security channel on Twitch and YouTube. Also, make sure you turn on those notifications so that you know when we go live.